All right. Hi, everyone. I am here with the amazing Shaun Bevins. Shaun has been coming to the studio for 9 years.
No, not
Has it
9
been
years.
9 years? You were in the first YTT?
I was in this, well, it wasn't 9 years. It was 2019. And you know how I remember? Because it was right before COVID. And it's when you did your what was it, the 25 Yuletide Yoga Challenge.
Oh, yeah.
And I posted, and that's actually how I got into yoga.
That was the hook.
I know, that was the hook, right.
No, okay, so 2019, that was the first YTT.
Right, it
the
was 2009.
studio's been open 9 years.
Right.
Okay, so, but that was still a pretty long time ago.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing that it's been 2019.
Did you get to 700 classes yet?
Yeah, I did.
Over 700 classes, this lady right here. And thank goodness she was in the first YTT, because she was the exact person I needed to be the guest speaker on the anatomy in the yoga teacher trainings, and she's been doing it. We're on YTT number 10 coming up.
Wow, that's hard to believe.
I know. And I didn't start counting till I was a couple in, because the first one I was like, I'm not counting this, I'm only doing one.
Right,
and then there was a demand, so I was like, all right, I'll do another one. That went on for a while before I started counting. Shaun, tell everybody a little bit about your credentials. And I mean, you can give them all the letters behind your name, but
all the letters. Okay. So my undergraduate degree was in nutritional sciences, and I ended up getting a professional master's in physical therapy, and ended up working in outpatient orthopedics almost for 30 years now. So that's kind of my professional credentials. In addition to that, though, I've always been really kind of deeply embedded in the fitness industry. I started teaching group fitness at the age of, I want to say 17 or 18. I think I was a senior in high school, taught group fitness for many, many years. Also used to teach a personal training certification course at the community college. I did that for another 10 years. And then I've now been through the 200-hour and the 300-hour yoga teacher training. So, I've kind of really been very deeply embedded in the wellness industry, I think, as a whole. So that's kind of just my
and
thing.
you know what else is amazing about you too is not only is Shaun like super embedded in the wellness industry, like you are not afraid to like poke at theories or like go out and invent something new or like put things together. And I think there's a big bravery that...
Yeah, I think one of the things that is true is that I've always had a deep curiosity. So I've always had a deep respect for science and understanding how things work, and this idea that we should use evidence to move our decisions forward. So we should have a basis from which we make decisions, not just in our professional lives, but in our daily lives. But I'm also very curious, and I have a deep respect for that which we don't know and we don't understand, because I think a lot, when you realize the more you learn that you really don't know as much as you think you know. So, with each new book I read, it just opens another door, and it really, I just come up with more questions. So I think I've always been very open to what most people deem as alternative therapies. I think that my experience with the yoga studio kind of took that to a whole new level, and it kind of came to me at a time in my life where I was intellectually hungry for that and also very open to it. And it really just made sense. Everything that I was learning in the studio, not just from the teacher training, but the practice itself, I think just resonated and seemed to connect very well to the things that I had learned as a clinician, not just in theory, but in practice, right? So, we have this theory, and I think that it has made me an infinitely better clinician. And from my own personal perspective, I feel like it has really just upped the fitness, wellness, health, whatever bar, and it's challenged me on so many levels. So I think that is something that's a little unique for a lot of practitioners, because I think sometimes practitioners get lumped into more of the woo-woo, kind of alternative genre, or they're kind of the tried and true, westernized version. And I think that and we've talked about this before, that it's a shame that there's not more bridging and more overlap and more inclusiveness in those approaches, because I think that we've left so much on the table.
Yeah. And one of the things that you probably don't hear me say it because I'm speaking about, like, when we do the 200 hour, one of the things that I used to always talk about, because Shaun is so science-based. I mean, if you need the information, the why behind the why, this is your lady right here. But she did the anatomy, which was a whole weekend of anatomy. And then following up was Kelly, who was very much, she would teach Hinduism, and she would teach all this spirituality. And what was so beautiful about having you and Kelly is Kelly had just a profound respect for you, and you had such a profound respect for her. And I think that's kind of the mesh that's going on right now, is like, more and more people that are science-based are starting to study the science of spirituality, which is something that we've been starving for so long, and vice versa. It's really been a beautiful.
I think in the scientific community, you have this, the double-blind, randomized, peer-reviewed journals. So if something doesn't appear in print, then it doesn't exist. Like it doesn't have any validity. And while I understand that, I think many of the more traditional approaches to health and wellness, were practiced because they stood the test of time, right? So they, people were doing these things because they worked, and they worked over long periods of time. And so I feel that we've kind of let go of that, or we've diminished that intuitive ancient wisdom that has a lot, really has a lot to teach us.
Yeah.
And I also think that we're really struggling in a time where, modern medicine, one of the biggest advances in modern medicine was sanitation and obviously antibiotics and vaccines, because we could address the harmful bacteria, and we could address viruses that could be dangerous to us, and sanitation, obviously. And so that had a tremendous impact on our longevity and our quality of life. Unfortunately, many of the other advances have actually opened up the door for chronic diseases. So we no longer die of diseases of sanitation, right? Now we die of diseases of convenience and of having too much. And so I think that we're living in a time that our body is being pitted against itself. I mean, a lot of the environment that exists now, from our food environment to our work environments to just our general practices, we're always indoors, we're always sitting. These things are not good for us. And there's a reason that they're not good for us. And so I think that there's new challenges that have emerged in the past few decades that didn't exist before. In addition to the fact that we are also, we've become very, particularly in medicine, I think we've become very snobbish. Like, you need to prove to me why this works, instead of being curious. Why does this work? Or why might this work? Or how might this work? And I think more and more clinicians are opening up to this fact, only because I think some of those ancient practices really were built around this idea of this symbiotic relationship between us and our environment. And so that relationship, even something as simple as our gut microbiome, right? So we're more microbial cells than we are human cells. We have about 100 times the amount of microbial DNA in our body compared to human DNA. And it used to be that we had much more microbial diversity, and part of that was we spend more time outside, right? We might have been walking barefoot through the grass. We call that grounding now, but we would have had access. We would have had more exposure with animals, and so we would have exchanged microbes. We would have had less sterilization, right? Everything's sterilized now. And so I feel like we're living in an environment that really is affecting the ecosystem, which is our body, and we don't even understand it. And so a lot of the traditional practices like yoga and some of the different areas of yoga really tie back into this idea of this relationship, not just that we have with ourselves and our own body, but that we have with our environment, that I think has a direct impact on our health.
Yeah, and so much. And I always am just always moved at how beautifully and intelligently you explain things. It really is. How many of these things do you think get addressed in a yoga studio, right? So you have obviously the actual yoga, the sweat, the getting to know your body, and the psychology and physicality of that. But then you also have things like community, you have things like education. I know Foundations is really big on educating you on your relationship with the planet, your relationship with the stars. So like, how many of those things do you think get addressed?
Well, if you take into consideration the number of people that I recommend, the number of my patients that I recommend come here, clearly I see that there's that the yoga studio has a lot to offer a lot of people. I think it's multi-tier. I think there's a very personal investment that comes when you go into a yoga studio. When you're practicing yoga, you're the only person you're trying to outperform is yourself, and you're not really even trying to outperform yourself. I think I said this once before, but time on the mat is like a date with your own body. It really gives you the opportunity to slow down and feel the things that you're feeling. There's a lot of emphasis on breath work, which we know is, this isn't woo-woo, this is solid science, and we know that breathing and different ways of breathing activate the parasympathetic or the sympathetic nervous system, can lower cortisol, can lower heart rate, can lower blood pressure. So and even may even increase or lower anxiety, because it increases our ability to tolerate more carbon dioxide in our blood. So I think that there's a lot to be garnered for the individual. There's this sense of, I'm a big fan of Bikram. I think the hot yoga, not that it's the only class that I enjoy, but it is one of my favorite classes. And because I feel like, particularly with Bikram, there's this idea of getting comfortable with your discomfort and kind of meeting your discomfort. And there's something very empowering about that, where the Bikram class is just a wonderful, beautiful balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system activation. And you'll see this now with some of the fitness influencers. Everybody's talking about stress and the nervous system, because we're understanding how important, when you're having a sympathetic nervous system response, you're having a body-wide response, you're having a chemical, neuro, physical response. And so it's not just feeling bad, it's not just stress, it's not just being uppity. So I think that particular class is really just this amazing kind of like working your antagonist and your agonist muscle groups. It's beautifully designed. I'm also a big, a huge fan of Yin and Nidra. Yin in particular, because I feel like one, there's the meditative quality, but I also think with Yin, it's that low, prolonged stretch. So a lot of the things I treat in physical therapy, so most injuries are the result of poor joint alignment and imbalanced forces around the joint, right? So Yin is kind of the foundation for alignment, right? So it's opening up the joints so that the joints are stacked properly. Because you can't, if you have an imbalance around the joint, it's just not as simple as lifting weights. People think everything's about strength. If you have a facilitated psoas, whether it's from injury or from stress, that facilitated psoas is going to impact the muscles on the other side of your body. And classes like Yin really do address that low, prolonged stretch, which is the physiological lengthening of non-contractile tissue. But it also is helping to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which actually helps to turn off some of the muscles that create that imbalance. Nidra, which oftentimes is paired with classes like Yin, is just a guided meditation. Actually, I meant to send you this clip, but what is it? Huberman, he's all over YouTube and social media. You know what I'm talking about? Well, anyway, they were talking about, he was talking about Nidra, the yogic sleep, as being a strategy for increasing dopamine. So, there's yoga isn't, it's a lot of things, and there's a lot of things that are happening to the body, and there's a lot of potential for things that are happening to the body. But I think what appeals to me the most as a physical therapist, it's all about balancing forces across joints, but also forces across your life, and also forces between the things in your life, right? So it's really about finding the sweet spot just not as an individual, and not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, but then also with each other, right? That's the sense of community and support and those sorts of things, and connecting us to the larger whole. So yeah, I mean, I think that obviously I'm a big fan, or I wouldn't be here all the time.
You are a big fan, and you have said so many things over the years of us knowing each other. One of them, and I'm probably just doing this because I have you here and you say it so beautifully, because I use it a lot, because yin, little easier, yin and meditation, a little easier to get people to come to. It's not hot, you can just lay on the floor and stretch. But the hot I really do struggle with, and people go, oh, well, I went to hot and I didn't feel good. I went to hot and one of the things that you say, and is just so beautiful, is, was it really the yoga that made you not feel good, or was it the 50 years you spent not eating super well? How do you say it? It's so beautiful.
Right. So, when you look at what's happening in yoga, one of the health benefits is that it's the heat, right? That's a hormetic stress. We know that which doesn't kill us has the potential to make us stronger, right? So hormetic stress is the idea behind intense heat, intense cold, fasting, and even exercise is a hormetic stress, right? So we buy into this idea that our bodies are beautifully designed. Low load stress in just the right amount actually makes the machine work better. I mean, that's the way we're designed.
Yeah.
The problem, I think, sometimes that happens with hot is that if you bring a body into a hot class that's already very stressed, you take the potential of overloading the system. That doesn't mean the class is bad. It means the system is broken. And so, there's always situations in which you have to just be aware of the fact that the heat itself is being a stressor, right? And then being active in the heat is a stressor. And I think that and we've seen some really people who are compromised physically coming to the hot classes regularly, right? So, I mean, we know that it's a class that anybody can come to, but I think it's like any, stressor, like hormetic stressor, that, it's just like fasting. If you have somebody's body that's already very physically stressed, you do need to be conscious of that. So if you have a heart condition, you might want to be a little tentative about, hot yoga in the short term, meaning just walking into a hot yoga class without any preparation. But just because something is hard in the moment or doesn't feel right in the moment doesn't mean it's not right, or doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that that you have to be methodical and intentional about how you apply it. And so I think, for anybody who has major concerns, or had a bad experience with hot yoga for whatever reason, maybe they were just overwhelmed by it, that might be a time to just, talk to one of the instructors to maybe help you understand. I think we all know this. Sometimes the things we need the most are the things that are the hardest for us, right? If we just gave up everything that was hard for us. I can tell you from a clinician who has been treating for years and who has read hundreds of books on health and wellness, and who has now almost finished my second book, that it is the most beautifully, brilliantly designed movement program I have ever seen. And I am constantly in awe of the way it all flows together. And this is speaking as a clinician, not as somebody who loves yoga, or somebody who even knew what Bikram or who he was or what he was before I met you or before I came into the studio. I'm attracted to the Bikram class because it is such a beautifully designed class, from a physical standpoint, from a cardiovascular standpoint, from a flexibility and strength standpoint, from a nervous system standpoint, from a breathwork standpoint. It just does so many things. And I even just things as simple, I mention this sometimes to the instructors, is when we're on the floor and we're doing these. It also is heavily weighted in extension. We are overflexed in our society. Bikram builds in all this beautiful extension into the class, which is just, we are so in need of, nothing will age you faster than bad posture, and what causes bad posture is weakening of the posterior chain, right? We kind of round over, we hunch over, forward head, rounded shoulders, that sort of thing. It will add 10, 15, 20 years to your life, and not in a good way, or your appearance, not to your life. And I think that whole extension series on the floor is just something most people need more than they realize. But he also is very precise about pointing the toes inward, which creates spinal decompression, right? So that wasn't not intentional. And I'm always fascinated by the little things that the little details maybe that some people don't pick up, but as a clinician and understanding how bodies work and studying bodies and touching bodies for 30 years, it is just a beautifully designed class. So I feel like there might be a handful of people that might have a bad experience for whatever reason, and anybody before they do any new fitness program should always consider where they are physically in their own bodies and may need some sort of stepping stones to get there, right? Yeah. But I think that it's a great class for even beginners, who might not or who might shy away from it.
That's the hardest part, is getting people to understand that not only is Bikram a beginner class, but everybody's kind of dumbed it down to the 60-minute. Even a lot of places are doing 45 minutes now. And I tell people I don't have a lot of regrets in my life. One of my few regrets is that we did offer a 60-minute series. I wish we would have kept it at the traditional 90. But we had to move with the times here. But the 90-minute series was meant to be a beginner class. And Shaun, you said it so beautifully with the why behind the why, and this is why I just love you. I tell people all the time, I'm like, your class is holding you true to how you treat yourself outside of class. Don't blame the class. Don't blame the teacher. Blame those wings you ate last week and the big beer.
And I mean, we
not
do that all
sleeping properly, or that kind of thing.
Right, and we do that all the time, and it's very easy to And I saw an article on fasting that was slamming fasting, and it was increasing these heart events, and what was increasing the heart events was not the fasting. It was that the people who were trying these extreme fasting regimes or regimens were in very poor health, and they weren't in poor health because they had been fasting. They were in poor health because of what they had been eating
of other
and their
things,
lifestyles. And I think that's misplaced.
But then the upside, the upswing to that is when you do commit yourself to a regular yoga practice, especially hot, the rest of your life starts to change organically. I mean, you see it as much as I do when people come in and they just commit to the practice, leave it there, then all of a sudden they find themselves eating better. They find themselves flossing. They find themselves sleeping proper time. Like it creates this organic shift if you allow it outside of here, which I've seen a lot, and I just think is so beautiful.
Right, and I think that's true with a lot of fitness in general. Again, I have a lot of reverence for the Bikram class because of my personal practice and just how it matches so much of what I do and what I understand, what I know. I think that when you start to take better care of yourself, when you start to feel the feels, when you start to understand what moves and what doesn't move, when you can, one of the reason I love Bikram too is that it's the same poses. Yeah. And I'm not criticizing, I'm saying that people that do the vinyasa flow, I mean, that's great, that's beautiful, it's breath with movement, like I get that. But there is something very centering about the same 26 movements. I think in all sorts of life, we sometimes think more is better, when sometimes it's just more. And sometimes it doesn't take, 1,000 moves to get fit. Sometimes it just takes 26, right? Yeah. And I have such reverence for the way those moves are designed, because it really does address every muscle, every body system, even the cardiorespiratory system, the lungs, the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So there's a lot going on there. And again, I don't truly appreciate the origins, and I don't have to, because again, I'm coming at it from a clinician's perspective, and I don't necessarily need to know where it came from, or I have a general sense of where it came from, but all the logistics behind the design. But I think the outcome or the output is just beautifully done. And you're right. I mean, it's very easy to, when we don't feel good, to blame it on the class, right? Like, that was hard. Yeah, there's a reason it was hard. And, it's also fair to say not every class is for every person. That's I think the beauty of diversity, and most yoga studios are offering you lots of different classes. And it's not that I don't think that Vinyasa offers benefits, or the other classes offer benefits.
I think I always tell people that, Bikram is the foundation of foundations.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I think it's the foundation of I don't want to get my head bit off by saying it's the foundation of yoga, but like if you're new to yoga and you're learning 26 postures, that's a lot easier than we're learning 4,000.
Oh yeah,
plus,
and it's you have you have the resting pose. So whether it's the mountain pose or the savasana, between every pose, nothing's rushed. It's very easy to make modifications because it's not rushed.
Yes.
You know what's coming. You don't have to be surprised by what's coming. And you don't even have to do every pose. And you can modify the pose to the cows come home. I mean, the idea is not that you have to achieve some end result. The idea is that it's the intention of the pose that is what you're working towards. And so, again, it definitely is a class. I think that it's accessible to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I love Bikram. I think everybody who knows me knows I love Bikram. And that's the class I probably most attend. Honestly, I think my three favorite classes are Bikram, Yin, and Nidra, and I think they complement each other very well.
You get your yin and yang for sure.
You get your yin
for
and
sure.
yang for sure. Yeah.
So, of course, we ended up just talking about hot yoga. We always end up there, don't we? I love it. But actually, one of the big reasons I wanted to bring Shaun on today is because Shaun, you've done a ton of things. I mean, she started this No Excuses group. This is outside of her career, by the way.
Right.
I mean, the No Excuses group, she's helped, I would imagine, thousands of people on that. You've written an incredible book. You're working on your second one. And now you've kind of blossomed into this like ageless thing. And you're going to present that in the 300 hour that's coming up. So let's talk about that for
Okay, so my first book was inspired by my No Excuses diet, wellness, exercise community on Facebook. And the book was written to address the questions that I saw coming up over and over again. And in preparation or while writing that book, I committed to reading 100 books, and it was give or take. But the idea is that I really wanted to delve deeper into all the topics that I felt needed to be addressed in what is really a basic book, but I think basics sometimes we underestimate the value of mastering the basics and understanding the basics. And during this whole process of reading these books, it sent me down a few rabbit holes. And there's nothing I enjoy more than a good rabbit hole. And also as I was aging myself, I think when the No Excuses book came out, I was 51. I'm 54 now. And so I was in my own personal life, just, at this point in my life where aging took on a new meaning, right? And I didn't like some of the things and that I was hearing about aging. I didn't like, and even though I have a line in my book about, I joke with my patients that, it's OLD. And while I say that jokingly, I feel like we have a very negative perception of what it means to age. So much so that we've created a whole industry that tries to keep us young from the outside in as opposed to the inside out, which I actually talk a lot about in the book. And it's not that I'm condemning those things. I get it. But I think what we're doing is we're trying to create an illusion of youth and health through external aesthetics. And we're missing the boat, right? We're missing the whole point is that health is something you embody. It's not, it's something that comes from the inside out. And well, anyway, so this whole, these delving down led me to start another group, which was called Ageless. And it inspired book 2. And book 2 is just about finished. It's a lot longer than book 1. And it really, I think, it is my statue of David, if I dare make a comparison. I mean, I've put my heart and soul into it, and I've really tried to embody what I think people like about me as a clinician, that there is this science where science meets soul. And I feel like that I'm very grounded in the sciences, but I feel like the science doesn't appeal to most people. And so I wanted to, bring it down into real life. I'm not a fitness influencer. I have a real job. I have 4 children. I don't have access to huge labs and, staffs. And, I'm just like a mom like the rest of you, just trying to, show up for my kids and show up in my life. And I feel like some of the books that have been written on aging are by these, like the equivalent of Hollywood elites, right? You know, like David Sinclair, and I mean, there's a bunch of them, books that are out there. You know, Outlive is the most. Peter Tia's book is probably the most popular at the moment. But, you know, and a lot of these books are either very heavy in science, or they're very, you know, kind of emotional and kind of touchy-feely. But I wanted to create a book that kind of merges both of that together. You know, so this is real life lived experience. This is a mom in her 50s who's living these things. And I really believe that how we age is a reflection of how we live, right? Yeah. And I don't feel that people understand how much they're leaving on the table, how beautiful the aging process can be. And I know you know this, I would not trade a wrinkle on my face to be 20 again. I wouldn't, right? Yeah. Because I feel like that the woman I am today is 1,000 times the woman I was, you know, 30 years ago. Yeah. And yeah, there's gray hair and there's wrinkles, but there's also this beautiful lived, you know, wisdom, and there's just, you know, you can't put life experience in a book. You've got to live it, right? So I feel like we've got to make peace with aging. And I think what's happening in society right now is people are profiting off of making women in particular feel that it's not okay to age. It's not okay to have gray hair. It's not okay to have wrinkles. And again, I'm not, you know, we all get it. I get it. It's not about poo-pooing, you know, aesthetic interventions, but I think we're reaching a point where it's becoming toxic and it's not healthy and it's getting away. Actually, I'll share this, not end with this. I was going through posts, and there was I think she was some sort of social media influencer, and she was a woman my age, so in her mid-50s, and I don't even know what sort of nip and tuck procedure she had, and she was showing her before and afters, and it was a very non-invasive procedure, and she looked beautiful. She looked great. Her before picture wasn't bad either, though, but you know, whatever. You know, and it just, so I just happened to notice in one of the comments, and one of the comments was like, man, it looked like you just ate all your veggies, slept, you know, your best sleep ever. And you know, and it was right. It was like, yeah, it does look like those things, but it's not those things. Yeah. And we should be promoting the eating the veggies. We should be promoting getting the good sleep as the strategies to aging well, right? As opposed to just turning to aesthetic interventions.
And it was even more than that, too. I mean, you have said some things to me that have shocked. So I was very, very fortunate enough. Shaun got into this. Well, she's been into this forever, but at some point along the way, you had interviewed some people that were aging very well, and I was very thrilled to be one of those people. Right. But one of the things that I learned during that was you had told me that I developed community and that I did acts of service. And I was like, yeah, what's that got to do with aging, Shaun? And you just blew my mind. So I think that's really important for people to know, too. I had no idea.
Well, because again, and this comes down to the idea is that there's the aesthetic. There's the two-dimensional aesthetic of aging. And we get that, right? We all want to look good. Trust me. Like I'm on the same page, and this isn't a dismissing of people's, you know, desire to look their best. I mean, I think we can all understand that. But I think what's happening now is that that aging well isn't just about a reflection, right, of the mirror. It's not a snapshot. It's not a Polaroid. Aging well is in an embodiment. It's a way of living. It's a way of showing up in your life. It's a way of showing up for yourself and your family. And, you know, no aesthetic procedure, you know, makes your mitochondria function better, right? No aesthetic procedure is going to, increase your insulin sensitivity. So I think that what we need to do is, and I think what's happening is in the aesthetics industry is that, I mean, it's preying upon women's insecurities and telling them they're not enough. And God forbid they have the audacity to have gray hair or, you know, have a wrinkle. And the interesting thing is, and I just find this fascinating, that when I finally decided to go gray, I dyed my hair for a few years, I've had more compliments on my hair since going gray than I ever had at any other time in my life. And I think that we're all playing this game. and trying to keep up in ways that don't truly reflect health. I mean, why? Beauty is in and of itself a survival strategy to, like full hips or, a healthy glow or healthy hair. Those are markers of internal health, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to be. And the aesthetics industry has turned it into some external paint job, as opposed to, and again, if you want the paint job, get the paint job. This isn't arguing about whether you should or shouldn't get the paint job, but it's about understanding that there's something that we're missing about aging well. Aging well is not just about looking good in the Polaroid, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so my book is really trying to help people to take ownership of that and give them resources for how they can do that. And I hope that, that it inspires a lot of women, because I do, and I mean, I'm not above the pressures. Like I'm right there with you. I feel it, and every time I, log into Facebook and I'm presented with every other ad is for some nip and tuck group or, or Botox or whatever. Like I get it. Like, and again, it's not judging, and it's not even a comment so much about the aesthetics themselves. But it's about this idea of that aging. We've turned aging into a three-ring circus, and we're really missing the whole point.
Well, this is one of the cultures that really looks down on aging.
Oh, right.
Anyway,
Right,
other
right,
cultures,
right.
I mean, when you age, you're honored. I mean,
that's true too, and I talk about that in a little bit in my book as well. Is that right? This idea of the revered sage, wise, elder. And we will do anything we can to look young. Yeah. But looking young and being metabolically young are not the same thing, right? And you can, I mean, it's if you understand, and I talk about the science of aging, like they've identified 12 different factors that drive the biological process of aging. So we know, and it's kind of interesting when you understand what's driving the aging process, and you understand how you slow that down.
What are these 12 factors?
Things like mitochondrial function, things like stem cell exhaustion, DNA, damage to the DNA strands. So I don't know if you ever heard the concept of telomeres, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a whole kind of area. AMPK is another one. And mTOR, it's an imbalance between those two systems, and so. We kind of understand what is physiologically driving the aging process. And so the best way, to really extend longevity and quality of life, what we call lifespan or health span, is because there's lifespan, there's health span, and there's the disease span. Hopefully we want to increase health span, right? Not just lifespan, and we certainly don't want to increase disease span. We want to increase health span. And so I think that we have a lot of control that we're just leaving on the table. And I think what's happening in the aesthetics industry is it's diluting the messaging. And again, it's hard to separate the aesthetics and make it sound like I'm not being critical of aesthetics, because again, I would never discourage anybody from not doing something that they felt that they needed to do. That's a personal choice. But I think what's happening now, I don't think there's a woman out there that doesn't feel the unhealthy pressures to meet some sort of unrealistic ideal standard that you're never going to get. And I think that's sad. And I think we're also equating, like that comment did, a good night's rest and eating your veggies with a surgical procedure. They're not the same thing. And so we need to have discussions around aging that allow women and men to age well. And I'm very careful in the book to try to stay away from the word anti-aging, because I think it stigmatizes aging. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm in the yoga studio every day. I look forward to being able to do more in my, more 5 years from now than I can do today. And that's because I want to live well. That's because I want to keep showing up in my life 100%. And I think the aesthetics part of it is just part of the culture we live in. It's always going to exist. but we shouldn't be doing it at the expense of our health, right? We shouldn't be doing it at the expense of our sanity. And I also think that that's, comes back to some of the yogic principles. It's finding peace within yourself, right? It's reconnecting to something that's not only yourself, but something that's greater than yourself. And so I think it's, Larissa, I tell, it always cracks me up because my financial advisor, who's a fellow yogi in the studio here, we had a discussion one day, and she was trying to explain to me why I needed to do this X, Y, or Z with the finances. And I just looked at her and I said, well, I don't really pay much attention to money because I think my greatest wealth is my health, right? That's my biggest investment. So to me, like, I measure how successful I am by how healthy I am, right? So that's kind of been my litmus, because I think Virgil said it. This is the opening quote to my book. Health really is our greatest wealth. And I think that yoga is a great modality. It's a great tool for not just physical health, the westernized version, but complete 360 health. And that's kind of what Ageless is about. And so, the yogi in me really has a very strong part in the book. And I'm hoping that the book will not just inspire people, but will empower people and will give them an opportunity to, one, understand what's happening in their body, to help them take agency over what's happening in their body, and also to give themselves permission to age in a way that is consistent with health and not just some, external, litmus of what it means to look good.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Shaun. We have certainly
covered a lot of areas.
We covered a lot. We always end up down this rabbit hole of hot yoga. It's been my lifesaver. I know Shaun is very impressed by it. So we can go down there. And the Ageless is just, we're so lucky to have her here at the studio. We always have such a great wealth of knowledge and a reference for information. You've helped us help the students. You've helped us grow as a studio. And I thank you so much for being a part of all of it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We will see you hopefully in Earth School. If not, you can catch Shaun in one of the 200 hours. We have YTT 10 coming up. And you can also find her on Facebook on your Ageless now.
Yeah, so I started the Ageless, I guess it's been a year and a half, and I'm a lot more active in that group. The big group is just, if you understand Facebook, it's once your groups get big, it's hard to really maintain a presence there. But I love the Ageless theme, and I think it doesn't matter how old you are. But clearly, I think women, it's kind of the midlife demographic that gravitates most. So we do a lot. I'm very active in the Ageless group. In fact, that's why I wanted to use the studio today. Yeah. I'm planning a challenge for December, which is something I try to do every month.
Ooh, what's your challenge?
Well, this month we actually covered nature, and we did herbs and spices because we couldn't decide on one. And then several of the members wanted to, or a number of the members said that they would like to do a yoga inspired theme. So I try to do themes. So December, I'm just going to share poses and hopefully share my love for yoga. And it is very special to me because, the reality is, prior to doing that challenge, I did yoga years and years and years before that as an undergrad at the University of Delaware, but I really hadn't been introduced to yoga. Yeah. And but for that challenge that somehow I came across on Facebook of all places, I would have not found the studio. I would have, who knows? And I can honestly say that yoga and the studio and my experiences here have changed my life exponentially, personally, professionally. So yeah, I can definitely say that. So that Yuletide challenge is very special to me.
I'm so glad it's getting paid forward.
I know, right?
Yay! Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and you can catch Shaun on Facebook or right here at Foundations. Yep.